Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Carrie Ray Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we're here to talk about publishing, marketing, and the business of being an author. We do come in every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. You can join us live at newshelves.com/FAF. And if you can't join us live, then you are welcome to email in questions to info at newshelves.com. We'll answer them on Fridays, and our YouTube replays do go up on our YouTube channel, which is New Shelves Books on YouTube. So you can find us there. We do have a couple of questions, both live and emailed in. So we are going to just jump right in. And because I don't want to lose it, I'm going to answer this question from Virginia first. I have a published book that has been translated into Spanish. How does one contact top publishers in a foreign country? So you have a couple of options, Virginia. You can, if you don't want to publish your book yourself in a different language, but you would like to have it translated, or you've already translated it and you'd like to work with a publisher, you can literally just go look for publishers in other countries and see what their submission requirements are for translations. I will say that while a lot of in the US, especially, a lot of our publishers require that you have an agent to submit, many publishers abroad for translation rights don't require that if your book has already been published in the US. So sometimes you may be able to simply research them and submit yourself. Other times, many authors will have their agent. If they have an agent, they will ask their agent to submit for translation rights, or they will find an agent specifically just for translation rights. Now, we have had an agent who deals with foreign rights on the show before. Her name's Anna Termini, so you can go back and find that on our YouTube channel. She had so many great tips on how to get some translation rights and things in. So highly recommend you check that out. But essentially, you just go find them, submit to them, and an agent can certainly be an option as well. Now, April has a question. How would one go about self-publishing a children's book with sound? So if you're talking about sound, as in, you open the page and it makes a sound, or it's push this button and there's sound, this is a complex for a self-published book. It's complex for a book at all. And the reason why is because you can't do this print on demand. It must be offset print, but beyond that, when you have elements like a button or sound elements, you have to actually have those manufactured into the book. So you either have to work with a company that already has certain approvals for children's safety to get that manufactured with a button, or you have to go through the process of getting your everything kind of through safety requirements. And again, it's offset print. Many times you'll be working with like a toy manufacturer, not necessarily a book printer or print on demand, although there are some companies that specifically work in books. So this is something, again, that's a little bit different than our typical print on demand. So it's not, we can't use Ingram Spark or KDP or any of those for these. You would have to specifically be looking for a manufacturer that deals in children's toys or in books that make sounds. Now, if you are going to self-publish a book and you're really hoping to use print on demand, one option you might consider is to have a print on demand book and then having a sound file that parents, caregivers receive by a QR code, something like that. So you could have a book that was just a normal children's book, print on demand, and then have in the very front a QR code that goes to a sound file. So it could be played with the book. I've seen this with like read along books, there's a read along file and people can download it. So that is different, obviously, because it brings technology into it. And it means that a child can't just do it on their own. It's not as tactile, but it's kind of that in between. So it really depends on what you are hoping to do with it. And it really depends on how much you're willing and able to invest in it. I have worked with authors who have done books with sound in them, and they invested a ton into manufacturing, into warehousing, and it took them several years to get through all of the approvals to sell in the US for a children's product. So just keep those in mind. And then maybe that information gives you more of an idea of what you might be up for or not up for, and that might guide your decisions for publishing. But yeah, so it'd be you would have a book and then a web page, or you would have a book and then an audio file. So they would be able to download it like an MP3 file, or they could listen to it online. It could even be like a YouTube video that's unlisted or private. There's lots of ways that you can do that. You could even have something like BookFunnel. BookFunnel will deliver MP3 files. So you could have it where, the QR code goes to BookFunnel that delivers an MP3 file for them like it was an audiobook. So a couple different options. Let's see, I paid for a Kirkus review. I haven't received it yet, and I know it could be good or not so good. If it's a good one, what are some ways that I can use it effectively? Great question, Marianne. So once you get an editorial review, there's a couple of ways you can use them. Number one, make it into a social media graphic, make it into something that's shareable using small excerpts. I think one of the things that so many authors do, they want to, if it's like a long review, they want to share that whole long review. That's beautiful. This is one of the biggest mistakes that authors make, in my opinion. People are not reading the whole review. You want to take out the juiciest bits and turn it into a graphic or a series of graphics you can use online, and then link to the full review if people want to read it. You will find that most people are not going to go read the full review. They're just going to read that one excerpt. So you can use it in social media graphics. You may choose to use it on your book cover, either the front or the back book cover. Again, use an excerpt. And again, I do believe when doing an excerpt, you want to use proper protocol. So if you're taking out words, you need to do the ellipses. You cannot purposely change the meaning. Yes, you can cut out certain things when you're quoting it, but we can't make it like if someone says like, this is the best example of the worst book I've ever read about science. Well, we couldn't change that to read, this is the best book, dot, 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 I've ever read about science, because that completely changes the meaning. And that does go against excerpt policies. And Kirkus does have their own excerpt policies. So keep that in mind. We can't totally change the meaning, but you can take juicy bits out. If it just says a stellar novel, and maybe that's part of a sentence, you can take that out and put it in a social media graphic. You can take that out and put it on your book cover. So putting it on the front or back of your book cover is another way to use it. I also recommend that you take your editorial reviews and you put them on your Amazon sales page. So whether you are the author or you are the publisher, it doesn't matter if you're traditionally published, hybrid, self-published, does not matter. If you go to Author Central and you claim your book on Author Central, which is free, you go to the book section from there, the editorial reviews section, and you can add in all of your editorial reviews so they show up on your Amazon sales page. So I recommend doing that. And I also recommend you taking some of your best blurbs, your best review quotes, and putting them on your one sheet or sales page that you would use for pitching book clubs or bookstores, libraries, podcasts, anything like that, anything in the industry. So those are a couple of ways to use them to kind of get it out there and use those quotes to bolster your marketing and to kind of show the world that a trade magazine, someone of note, has given you a positive review. So just keep in mind that if you do this with Kirkus, it must be a published review. Sometimes I see people who have a not so stellar overall review. And Kirkus, if you pay for it, gives you the option to print or to publish or not publish the review. It can be terrible and you can say, nope, I don't want the world to see that. Or you could publish it and make it go live. Just know that if you don't publish that review to go live in public, you cannot quote from it. So you can't have a overall not great review, not publish it, and then take a good piece from it. You're either all in or all out. So just keep that in mind, and then use it from that way. Absolutely. Let's see. Is there anything different that needs to be done to advertise on Amazon in a different country? So Amazon does have ad capabilities in Canada, UK, and multiple other places outside of the US. And all you need to do is you just have to register for each of those. So it's the same account, but you do have to register um, on those. And there is a drop down that will take you to the different platforms. So it'll be Amazon Canada, Amazon UK, and it is kind of like a separate ad dashboard that you'll be seeing. So there's nothing special that you super like, it's not like a whole new account, but it is a different drop down and you have to create ads specifically for that other market. I will say that if you do this, make sure you keep record of it because I've seen way too many authors will go into the Canada platform one day, they'll create an ad and then they'll just forget about it. And then they'll get really mad when they're like, Amazon's still charging me money and I don't know why my ads aren't running. And it's because they might be running in other countries that they're not necessarily seeing. So make sure that if you are going to advertise other than your main country or the US, that you are watching that and you know that the drop down's there and to check it every now and then. Our audiobook crowdfunding campaign stalled out early. Oh, I'm sorry. The book has been out for months and now we are pre-selling the finished audiobook. We've only had a few responses. How do we tell if this is a lack of responses, an awareness issue, or a financial issue if we can? So if you're doing a crowdfunding campaign, I think there's a couple of things. I know some of the sites do give you metrics as far as how many people are visiting your page. So that helps you kind of know about awareness and how many people are visiting the page. But I would also be asking you questions like, what is your personal fan base? What's your social media like? Have you been sharing it there? Do you have an email list and have you been sharing it there? The thing about crowdfunding that no one tells you, because people talk about crowdfunding as a way to publish or to do things before you have the capital for it. But what people don't tell you is successful crowdfunding almost always starts with a successful platform. It means having people to share that campaign with and giving them something juicy that they want to support or building a relationship so they want to support you. Now, can you do a crowdfunding campaign with no email list, with no social media, and could it still get filled? Absolutely. There are people who are on these platforms all the time who might decide to be an investor, who might be a part of your campaign. However, you cannot bank on that because it can happen, but you can also make the New York Times bestseller list. So it's one of those things where, yes, it could happen, but you can't bank on that. So I would be asking yourself, what kind of platform do you have? And how have you been sharing it as far as that awareness level there? Also, do you have other authors you can cross promote with? You can ask them to share and ask to share something of theirs with your audience. That would be the first thing that I would be looking at is how much exposure have you given this campaign, starting from there. But also, can you incentivize people to share? Hey guys, I'm having a contest today. I would love for this to be shared far and wide on social media. So everyone that shares this post today and puts a comment that they shared it, I will be, giving away one free audiobook or giving away the next book or something totally different. But creating some incentive for people to share can also be smart. And again, those are the things I'd be looking at first. And also, honestly, looking if you're doing a crowdfunding campaign with um, tiers, the reward tiers, are your reward tiers better than average? I think is the thing is that if you're asking someone to give $30 to get an audiobook, you're probably going to have a hard time. But if you're asking someone to give $10 for an audiobook that's going to be 30 when it comes out, man, that's a good deal. And so I think that's part of it also is that even though it's a community and support thing when we do a crowdfunding campaign, knowing that people still want a good deal, they still want to be special somehow. So what are you giving them that is special that they won't be able to get once the audiobook's already out and they just go buy it for themselves or use an Audible credit or whatever it may be? I hope that helps and good luck. I hope that you fund. I know that can be nerve-wracking when something stalls out. Yes, always check the laws for giveaways in whatever country you are in. As I say often publicly, I am not a lawyer and I cannot give legal advice, nor am I a doctor. Can't give medical advice either. Although I've been watching enough Grey's Anatomy that I feel like I could. I know I can't, but I feel like I could. Let's see. Let me go to one of our emailed questions just because I don't want to miss these. Let's see. All right. Francis, my dear, let's see your question. I plan to release the first 3 books in a mystery series in Kindle Unlimited in 2025 to 2026. It's going to be a rapid-ish release of Christmas, Valentine's Day, and Easter themed mysteries. When should I put my reader magnet, the ebook and MP3 audiobook, up on BookFunnel? Would it get stale if I posted it too early? It's almost ready now. This is such a smart question, and I actually ran into this with a client recently who had their giveaway ready to go. They were like, I'm gonna start building my emails. And I was like, when are you publishing? And it was in 2025. And I was like, whoa, hold back. Here's the thing is, yes, it can go stale. And not only that, you want to excite people with your prequel or your tie-in, but we don't want to get them excited about something so far in advance and then not have anything to give them or not have communication to go back and forth. Typically, when I'm doing list building, I don't like to use something any more than 6 months in advance of the launch, unless you are giving people secret chapters or more content along the way. But a year or more out is a really long time to expect someone to stay interested and excited. And the idea behind a leader magnet, if it's tied into the series, part of it, yes, is to build your email list, but part of it is a soft entry into the series. So they'll be excited when the book comes out. And I don't know if pre-orders, actually, books in general, pre-orders are kind of going down. And you know why? Because we don't want to wait. We don't want to spend money on something today that we won't get for a year. Because we are in a Amazon society of where I order it today, I get it tomorrow. And so that long wait isn't necessarily something I would build up. So I would be holding that back for 6 months or so, unless the only caveat is unless your leader magnet or unless that thing that's collecting emails is one of many. So if you have a short story or something and you're getting people onto your email list, and then you promise them every month, I'm going to give you another short story. I'm going to give you something else that builds up either on the genre or on the series. Maybe you tell them, hey, here's the leader magnet. Stay on my mailing list. And every week or every month, I'm going to give you a chapter of the book. And maybe that means by the time your first book comes out, they've all already read it. Hey, you've got a lot of ARC readers now who could go leave reviews, although it will mean that your sales may be a little bit lower, but that's okay because your first book, typically that does happen. So I think that if you're going to use it early, just be really smart about how you're engaging people and keeping them interested in the story for your launch. And then the second question here was last week I talked about audiobooks on YouTube. So the question is, would I undermine the data harvesting taking place on BookFunnel if I also posted the MP3 of the reader magnet to my YouTube channel? I don't think so, based on what I have heard, read, and seen. I get this question even with YouTube, like, will I cannibalize my paid sales if I have my audiobook free on YouTube? And this is kind of the same question. Would you cannibalize the leader or reader magnet and getting the information from readers if you post it to YouTube? And I don't think so. Let me tell you why. Now, you may not advertise that it's on YouTube. You might put it up there to build on YouTube, but maybe not advertise because you want people to sign up for your email list for it. But I have seen that it doesn't necessarily cannibalize that, because what happens is if you're putting audiobooks on YouTube and you're just focusing that on YouTube, you're not necessarily marketing that to everybody. The people who are listening to audiobooks on YouTube, that's where they hang out. That's where they're looking for books, and that's where they're finding them. The people who listen to audiobooks on Audible, who don't want commercials, who have credits, who have a subscription, that's where they're looking for their audiobooks. So they're not necessarily crossing over. The people who are connecting with you and signing up for your mailing list aren't necessarily the people that are hanging out on YouTube looking for audiobooks. Now, sometimes there's a crossover, but again, I've even seen where people, because there are commercials on YouTube and people get annoyed, either they end up paying for the subscription service on YouTube or they just go buy the audiobook. Or, you could even put it up on YouTube and say to listen without any ads, download it here and have the link to your reader magnet. So I think that it is kind of a different audience and you're just marketing to both. And I think that there's availability there to do that. I've heard a lot of people say that when they do put their audiobooks on YouTube, not only are they building their YouTube audience and monetizing there, but they say an increase in their overall audiobook sales because of the very reason I just said. People are annoyed. They're like, okay, well, I listened to enough of it. I'm going to go grab it over here because it's not that expensive, or I have a credit, whatever it may be. And it's easier for them to listen to. So I don't think you would necessarily hurt yourself. But it's always one of those things that how do you position it and what are your ultimate goals, and just tying into that. See, how do you find book clubs to pitch? Well, book clubs a lot of times are connected to bookstores, libraries, or they're online. So I will say that if you're looking for book clubs to pitch, those are the best places to look for. However, the best way to get into book clubs is to literally ask your readers, your audience, hey, do you know of a book club that maybe I could, maybe you guys could read my book and I could be a guest? That is one of the best ways, because most of the times book clubs, yes, there are some really big book clubs, celebrity book clubs and things where the readers are not picking the book. But if it's a small group at a library or a small group at a bookstore, oftentimes they'll be talking about books and kind of decide together. So having suggestions or putting it up that way and having your readers suggest it is a fantastic thing to do. And then just pitching yourself. But if you're going to pitch yourself to book clubs for libraries, bookstores, or online, it's really important to think of how you can serve them. So, letting them know, I would love to be a part of your book club. My books are available on ebook and audiobook. You can get them on Overdrive, so they are free from your library if you request them. I have the paperback, and I am happy to come in person or on Zoom to do a book club with you when your group is done. How are you going to serve them? Do you have book club questions? Do you have, you know, what are you doing to help facilitate that? And that's a really important piece of it, is that book clubs are meant to be books that people, number one, want to talk about, and that it's engaging to read and talk about. So on that end, I think it's really important that you help foster that conversation. And again, are you going to be a part of it or not? So that's really important. And also, I just want to let everyone know, I think we might have talked about it, but I don't remember. Draft to Digital just recently included Fable in their distribution. And Fable is a app. It's like a reader reviewer sales app that is specifically working with book clubs. So if you are on Draft to Digital and your books are on Draft to Digital, not only are they on Overdrive for libraries, but you can opt into Fable, and Fable is connected with tens of thousands of book clubs. And so having your book on this platform means that when people are looking for book club books, they may go into this app and search and find you there. So that's another kind of thing that if you're sharing with a book club, you could let them know your book's available on Fable if your book is extended distribution through Draft to Digital. Does not work if your book is in Kindle Unlimited. So just kind of think of how can you serve them? How can you make it an easy yes? I say this a lot. When we are talking about sales, we're talking about marketing, we're talking about getting followers. How can you make it an easy yes, a no-brainer yes? And the more that you can build that up, the better off you'll be. Because when you think of all the ways to help someone make the decision and you take away the barriers of the, oh, well, I don't know if we can all afford it. Okay, well, it's on overdrive, so you can get it free from your library. When you take away those barriers, you think about the possible ones and you address them before they ever have a concern, you're making it easier to say yes. And that is a key to successfully pitching anywhere, anyone, whether it be, libraries to stock it on their shelves or bookstores or book clubs. Make it an easy yes. Completely agree, Bob. We can talk about that. All right. I had an anonymous question. This one's a biggie. So I won't read the entire thing, but the gist of it is um, this person had a Facebook friend ask them to read their first book um, and review it. And they really liked it. This person who was asked to read and review, they really loved it. So they read it, they reviewed it, positive review, fantastic. However, about a year later, the author asked them to read their second book and post a review of it. And unfortunately, the person asking the question did not love the book that much. They didn't like it at all, really. And so when writing a review, it didn't feel right. Like, how do you recommend something that you really don't like? And that author asked the person with the question, they asked them, hey, did you read the book? Can you leave a review? I encourage you guys to follow up and ask for reviews more than once. And this person did that. So kudos to them for doing that. But it made the person asking this question today uncomfortable because they couldn't leave a positive review. And so the author had this dilemma of, do I just avoid them? Do I honestly tell them I didn't love the book? Do I leave a positive review even though I don't think it was really that great? What do I do here? And I think that is something that if you are in author circles, you get into a lot. And yes, it does come in with the whole culture of soliciting reviews because we have to ask for honest reviews. And sometimes we want honest reviews. I have to say, I had an author get a 3-star the other day and he goes, man, but that's another review. He was just excited that it was a review. He's like, that means someone read it. I was like, that is true. But we do want honest reviews, but when it's someone we know, when it's someone we care about, when it's a friend, colleague, if they truly hate our book and give us a 1-star, we're totally going to be a little bit miffed. So it's this dilemma of wanting to support people, wanting to be honest, knowing authors are going to ask for reviews, and how do you navigate these waters? Because I think that it is a difficult thing to do. So let's get into this overall. Yes, I absolutely recommend you ask for reviews. And I do recommend that you follow up and ask people for reviews. I typically say, ask the first time, set it up. If they agree, then you get them the book or they have the book. Follow up, ask them if they're reading the book and if they like it, and ask for a review. And then if it's been a couple of months, put out a general ask saying, I'd still love a review. After 3 times, definitely let it lie. However, from the other side, what do you do when the book's not to your liking or it's not to your taste? So I have a policy that if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, but don't lie. And that is difficult sometimes. So personally, what I recommend is if someone's asking you to review something that you can't in good conscience review positively, it depends on your relationship with them if you give them honest feedback. Now, I personally am in a position with a lot of authors where I am here to help them. And so sometimes I get to say really tough things that other people can't. I have people bring me their books and say, well, my beta readers loved it. My family loved it. This is the best thing ever written. And I read it and it's not good. It's just not good. And then I find out later their beta reader is their best friend. And then mom read it and auntie read it and they all loved it. And I have had to tell people because, again, it's my position, my job. I have had to tell people um, that there might be issues with the book that might be hindering sales or might hinder sales in the future. The thing is that I am in the position with these people to do that. I am not typically their friend. I am someone they have paid to consult or mentor them. And so it is my job to give them the hard truths. If this is your best friend and you know it's not going to be received well, sometimes it's just not a good place. Now, in that case, what I would do is if it is before it's published, I typically say, I really liked it, but I don't typically read this genre, or I don't feel like I'm in a good place to give you great feedback. I recommend that you go find a beta reader or someone maybe that's new to the book or the series. If you do, in fact, want to give feedback or have to give feedback, my policy is always, always find something good about the book. And I promise you can find it. Whether it is, I really loved the grit this character had. Like, it was just fantastic. This character was funny and I loved her. I did kind of have a hard time following the plot. I felt like it was confusing, and I ended up having to keep a note sheet of who was who and what lies they were in. So I struggled with that. Some people call it the compliment sandwich, where you say something nice and then something hard and then something nice. But the idea is very rarely will you read a manuscript or a book that you hate everything about. Occasionally you'll find one, but not often. So look for the things you like and make sure you lead with positivity and encouragement. And then when you are giving tough feedback, it's it's much like in a relationship, when you're arguing, we start with the I feel sentences, or I had a hard time with this. I feel like this may not be it didn't feel right to me. This is just my opinion, but maybe you could get more feedback on that. And I think that is something that is very important, that unless you are the god of editors, you cannot tell them your book was terrible grammatically and everything was wrong. No, if you are an actual editor and this is your job, absolutely, you can make more forceful corrections. But in most cases, it's I feel statements. I feel like this could have been pushed farther. I like this character, but I could love it and the story if maybe XYZ. Now, this is in the developmental stages, though. That's a little bit different. Um, Once the book is out, if you're asked to leave a review, this gets a little bit harder. And so I don't, now, avoiding maybe once, maybe twice, I get it. But beyond that, if someone's still asking for a review and they're really persistent, how do you handle it? You have some options. You can, on Goodreads at least, leave a Goodreads review, not necessarily an Amazon review. And what I would do is I would leave a Goodreads review without any star ratings. And I would simply say the positive things that you liked. I really love this author's first book. This book had some of the same lovable characters. I'm excited to see what they come out with next. It's not negative. It's not putting them down. It's still honest, and you're not lying. So I think that's one of those things that you have to navigate very, very carefully. Would I put up a glowing positive review of a book I didn't like? Personally, I don't. And I don't because, well, number one, my name can be looked up. And if I'm out there saying that books that are not good are fantastic, then as a professional, it's not a good look. It makes it look like I don't know what I'm doing. But also everyone depends on reviews. So um I hate to put out an opinion I don't really have. And sometimes it's simply just telling someone, hey, I'm not reviewing right now, or whatever it may be. And it's very tough. And it does depend on your relationship with this person. It depends on how well you know them. how much detail you want to give them or not give them. And I think that's where it's hard because I can give you all the ideas and suggestions in the world, and we've got some great things over here on our comment bar as well, and I'll go over some of them. But it is just one of those things that ultimately it's what is your relationship with them? And yes, David, I love you all. I love you all, but I will give you tough love. And if it's terrible, I'm going to tell you it's terrible. I often say I get to see a book many times before it's published. If I don't tell you it's terrible, someone else will. So I at least want you to go in with your eyes wide open. It's my job. And also, I really enjoy doing that. So I think that's absolutely true. All right, let's see some of the sidebar here, just because I think it's really great, the conversation that is going over here. Let's see. Ooh, we have a lot of conversation, and I love it. All right, let's see. Yes, and a lot of people are saying that's really hard. If I can't give a 4 or 5 star review, I feel like I can't review it. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just don't. Like I said, if you can't say something nice or at least find something positive, then maybe don't do it. And also, I want to say, how do you support? I've had this question before. How do you support an author if you don't want to or can't review their book? If you think maybe the book's just not for you or you don't feel like you can honestly review it, share their social media post, like it, comment on it, show your support and that you're there for them in other ways than reviewing because it's free. And just because you share a post, you're helping a friend doesn't mean you're saying it's the best book ever. Just share their post, like it, comment it. It helps them build their platform maybe over their reviews, and that's okay too. Yes, and you can always, again, privately, if you're going to give them criticism, do not blindside them with it. Go ahead and give it to them privately first if you are going to do that. I've even had people say, this is my honest review of the book, and I wanted to send it to you privately. I'm happy to put it on review sites, but I wanted to run it by you first. And sometimes people say, no, it's good. It's critical, but it's good. Put it up there. Sometimes they're hurt. Sometimes I usually am the person who gets the Carrie, I just got this email. And, you know, and this is a terrible review. And is it true? Am I a failure? I am the person who usually will get those questions and those reviews. And sometimes they're great growing moments, I have to say. And yeah, not everyone's going to love your book. Not everyone's going to give you a fantastic review. Not everyone's going to like your style or your book, and that's absolutely okay. I have a client right now who some people do not like his newest book because it's such a departure from what he's done. I devoured this book in hours. It is my favorite book he has ever put out. I think it's fantastic. I think this is the book that is going to ultimately shift his career as an author. And yeah, it's different. So some people don't like it, and some people have given really harsh reviews. But it's also gotten some really great reviews, and it's selling and getting more attention than any of the other books, in my opinion, this early on in the game. So I think it just depends, right? Sometimes it's just personal preference, and that's okay too. Yeah, and also this is great from Teresa. If you get a review or feedback that's harsh, like, I've gotten some reviews that aren't very positive, or they say it's confusing because they have too many characters, or it used another language and I didn't know what it meant, or maybe it's sci-fi and it's got a made-up language. What can you learn and how can you adapt and make it better? Can you put in a cast of characters if people are confused by your characters? Can you put in a glossary if you have your own made-up language and people are confused by some of the words? Sometimes it is the catalyst you need to make something better with a really small, easy change. So don't miss out on that. Yes, Goodreads reviews can be the devil's underpants, Bob. Can be, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, and sometimes people really just do want those reviews. Absolutely. Oh, I got in trouble for giving 4 stars instead of a 5. Um, I always tell people, hey, you don't want all 5 stars. It looks like you know everyone. I get a lot of people upset about their first 4, 3 star, even 1 star. And I'm like, hey, you're now a real author. Your book is credible. Good job. Absolutely. Yes, I think this is important. The note that a 3 to a 5 star is a good review. There are a lot of people that when they are doing reviews and they kind of look at like their scale of what's good and what's not, 3 is good, 4 is really good, and 5 is like there are 2 books in the world that get my 5. There are a lot of people who review books and read a lot of books that 3 is good. It was a good book. I read it. I enjoyed it. 4 was couldn't put it down, and 5 is like if you get that, go play the lottery, and that's okay. And sometimes a 1 star review, I was talking to a client about this yesterday. Sometimes a 1 star review, I've had 1 star reviews that complain about something that are the reason why I bought a book, or it's the reason why someone else loved it. 1 star, this book didn't have enough heat in it for a romance novel. And then the next person is like, oh, good, that's what I'm looking for. I wasn't really looking for all that. So sometimes it just depends. It can be the catalyst for your next sale. Yep. And it's so subjective, you guys. I mean, it's art. That's why I feel statements are really important because you could give me I don't know, you could give me a sci-fi book. And I like a lot of sci-fi, but some sci-fi tends to be to explain because they have to, it's world building, but they explain like the territory and characters and things in at length and in detail, and I'm like rolling my eyes over here and I'm like, all right, we get it, it's a person, they're tall, let's get on with it. And someone else might say, well, I really appreciate that they gave these lengthy descriptions because I needed that to imagine the world. So it's so subjective, and it's not bad to get a 3 star, and it is a really really hard thing, but I think that you can navigate it with grace, and you can, you can kind of learn from it. And hopefully, again, it goes back to how your relationship is with this person. And there are things I would say to some of my clients I wouldn't say to others, because for one, it's going to push them to go further and do better. And the other one, it's going to break them down and make them never want to write again. So we have to find that balance and know the person a little bit. And sometimes if you don't know them very well, err on the side of caution. Now this is back to the Kirkus review. So what do you do with a not great Kirkus review with a great pull-out line, but also a bad line? Publish it. Remember, I said most of the time people are not going to read the full review. They are going to take the excerpt. So if there is one good line in there, I would take it, publish it, and take that one good line. Very few people are going to go to Kirkus and read the entire review. It'll be there, but very few people are actually going to go find it. So I mean, there's only been 2 in my entire career of people who paid for Kirkus reviews. So they had a choice to publish it or not. There are only 2 that we decided not to publish. One, because it misconstrued the book so very poorly. Um, they actually ended up getting refunded. They didn't get a new review, but they got refunded because it misconstrued the book so poorly that it made it something that it wasn't. Um, and although books are subjective, and so it's kind of up to the reviewer, it it was it was bad enough. Again, they got a refund. Kirkus doesn't usually do that. And the other one, it was not a good, that pull it out line wasn't good enough to put the other stuff out there. So I think you weigh it. But if there's a really great pull out line and then some stuff that's just kind of meh or not totally positive, I'd go for it. But that's me. And I think also it depends, read that review and see, is it just something where it wasn't glowing, or is it something that's going to hurt you and your book? That's a little bit different, I think. Oh, and the good line is brings together 2 love stories that serve as brilliant mirrors for one another. I think that's a great line. That's a great excerpt pull out. And the bad line. Oh, let's get into this. An emotional story that suffers from pacing issues and cliched dramatic moments. Um, I don't think that's the worst thing ever. There's a reason why we have tropes and cliches. It's because people like them. Um, a cliche in a lot of ways is a trope. Now, not always. I'm putting a blanket statement out here, but in a lot of ways, a cliche and a trope are very close together sometimes, and people like them. So don't be afraid of that necessarily. I don't think that is something that is going to hurt you in a sense of not putting it out there. Personally, good. I'm glad. And the good line was really good. Like that was a really, really good line. Let's see if we have any more questions. We've got about 5 more minutes here. Let's see. Oh yeah, we're just talking over here about world building and things, but we do have about 5 more minutes. If you have any more questions, one of the things that I have seen a lot this week is there is um, a lot of people talking about a Substack article that I forget what the actual title is, but it's something like People Don't Buy Books. And it's this whole article that kind of pulls up different stats and things from the attempted merger of uh, the Penguin merger last year that didn't go through. And it's pulling out a bunch of quotes from there. And it's essentially saying people don't buy books and there's no reason to go with traditional publishers and all sorts of things. Jane Friedman addressed it in her Hot Sheets newsletter. And I agree with a lot of what she said is that someone pulled out different aspects of publishing, stats, book marketing, and sales, and being an author. And they kind of highlighted certain dramatic aspects and put it out with a sensational headline that got a lot of attention. And so it's being shared a lot. And it's kind of a really depressing view of what publishing is. But you guys, we've been talking about these stats and this information for months, years. We've been talking about how, yeah, it's harder to get an agent, that royalties aren't what they used to be because it's spread out more. There are more books now than there used to be. And so reader money is spread out more than it used to be. It is a more crowded market. That doesn't mean you can't be successful. It doesn't mean your art doesn't matter or doesn't have a chance. And people do buy books. I wouldn't have a job if people didn't buy books. I have authors who do make a living full time who started from nothing a couple years ago. And I have authors who, they do it as a hobby because it doesn't make a full time income. This is not new. This is not scary. People buy books. Publishing's not going under. And actually, if we look at the numbers, book sales and numbers are up now higher than they were 5 years ago. So we're actually seeing a positive trend. Now, no, it's not quite as high as it was when everything was shut down in 2020, but those were very unusual circumstances. So I think it's a sensational article. I think it pulls out some good information we've already talked about. It's already been, it's been 2 years that those data and information has been out about different publishers talking about how few a lot of books sell, that a lot of books won't even sell 1,000 copies. And we've known that for a really long time. This is not new. You just have to be the person who puts yourself and your book out there, who markets your book. So you are more than that statistic. And a lot of the authors on this call are. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see those numbers. I mean, 2020 was just like a totally different thing. So it's crazy. All right. I think we got all the questions for today. I'll be back next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So join me then. I'd love to have you. Oh, and I wanted to show you guys. So Bob Pixine was on the show 2 weeks ago. The YouTube replay was delayed because of some things, but it's going to go up today. And I wanted to show you. I got his book in the mail, in early advance copy this week. And so I just wanted to show it to you. First off, it's got foiling on the title here. and it's beautiful. It's a nice little book, and I wanted to show you guys that it is the perfect little coffee table book. And the illustrations, Bob, you outdid yourself. Yeah, see, David gets it because he does all the art things too, but beautiful color. And I will say we do often talk about print, and this is one of those books I would absolutely, this is when you do offset print because the colors, the richness in here is just, the page is thicker and it's really just a beautiful, beautiful book. Um, it's got all the museums. So this is, of course, the footnotes from the most fascinating museum. So it's museums all over. And it's just, it's gorgeous and it's easy read. I actually love this kind of book because if I leave it out somewhere, my kids will just like randomly pick it up and read it because it's just a page. So absolutely gorgeous. If you have not pre-ordered your copy, go get it. I don't know, Bob, if your Goodreads giveaway is still going, but if you follow Bob online with all of his stuff, and if you go to bobeckstein.com, you'll find all of his stuff. And it's absolutely beautiful. So a little shout out to Bob. Thank you for the book. It's beautiful. For everyone else, I hope you have a good week, a good weekend. I will see you next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Until then, have a great week, you guys. Bye, everybody.